This is Darker Days Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by... Let's start with Chigg. How's it going, Chigg?
Pretty good, Mike. How you doing?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Just chipper, in fact. It's been a while since we had an episode. And of course, one of the driving forces behind this episode and all of Darker Days is Chris. How's it going, Chris?
It's good. Been doing various different things. Trying to get some stuff painted, got some wargaming scenery, trying to get some wargaming going, and obviously finished writing my first project for Fading Suns, and hopefully be writing some more soon. So otherwise, pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. What kind of gaming has been going on? Chigg, have you been playing your Rocket Age game a little bit?
Unfortunately, no. Due to illnesses and injuries, my group has been unable to meet for the past couple of weeks. So, hopefully, we're going to turn that around tonight.
All right.
I have actually started playing a minis game, Malifaux, a little skirmish game.
Ooh.
So I might bug Chris about some mini painting help later.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Chigg, I'm not good enough for you?
Well, I've already bugged you for help, so I'd like to get a second or third or 15th opinion, you know.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
My immediate advice, Chig, is if you're playing Malifaux and you want some scenery,
I do.
start trawling your local gaming stores and trying to find the Terraclips set, because that stuff works. It's awesome.
They have scenery for the little clicky games? I had no idea.
So for Malifaux, Weird Miniatures paired up with a company called WorldWorks Games, and they make printable scenery, but they also made a 6 box sets of scenery called Terraclips, and they have the kind of like a hidden grid on the scenery, so it's good for role play, for grid-based stuff. But the way you can construct it and it clips together, it's great. And one of the sets which everyone wants, and I've now got 2 sets of, and it's really rare now because they don't make it anymore, is the buildings of Malifaux. So it's kind of like I would say Tudor-esque kind of buildings, and you can make any size of buildings with it. And you only have to dump down the box set. I think if you've got enough clips and a box set of it, it makes you can make about 4 good-sized buildings, or you can make one huge kind of small manor house.
Holy
and you can dump
crap.
that on the
Yeah.
So
I just Googled it. I'm looking at it. Wow, I've never even heard of this stuff before.
Yeah, so I've got 2 sets of the buildings, so you can imagine how big I could make something if I really wanted to. I've got the streets of Malifaux, so if you have that and a building set combined together, it'll cover a 3x3 area with decent-sized buildings and walkways and shit like that. What else have I got? And I've also got the Vault of Ruin, so that gives you some kind of more dungeon, decrepit-looking dungeons with partially destroyed walls, and those are good if you want for if Mike and I, for Mike and myself, when we play say something like War Machine, it's good to have some walls that you can hide behind, but also your men can see over and shoot and all that crap. And then the other set I've got is called Prison of the Forsaken. So also in some of these sets, especially in the Dungeon Rise set, you get the little card props, like they make chairs or tables or beds.
What?
So in Prison of the Forsaken, the beds, if you turn over the bed section, it can either be a bed or it can be a torture table. So you can really set up some really cool scenery. There's also the sewers. There's also another one called Dungeon Essentials, which I really should get my own copy. But one of my gaming group bought that, and I've got it at my place for when we play Iron Kingdoms, because it's got cool stuff in it. Like some of the props are like fireplaces and bookcases and stuff like that. So you can really festoon, a mini-based RPG with some cool scenery elements for like set pieces where you want it just to look interesting for a fight. I don't use it all the time. I think you can get too caught up in it. But also, it's really good for wargaming. Also, in the Vaults of Ruin one, you get like some of the props are like allow you to make tombs, so you can have
Mm-hmm.
like so. If you look on the Darker Days blog spot, pimping that out. Obviously, Mike, didn't I put? I've put like loads of gaming stuff up there for miniatures because obviously, you may as well show pictures of these stuff. And there's pictures of when my group was playing through part one of the Witchfire trilogy, and it's the fight outside the cathedral, and all that is Terraclips.
That
So
is
yeah, if you can
insane.
find it, people out there, get it because it ain't being made anymore. It will never be made anymore. Buy it, and it's worth the money. The only thing coming up which potentially will be a good replacement for it, if you can't get hold of it, is battle systems. So I don't know if anyone's seen this. Battle system, again, is a card-based clip-together scenery. They've done a sci-fi set via Kickstarter, so it's really good for, like, say, to have actual scenery for, say, Space Hulk or games like that, or if you just want to play kind of like a sci-fi game and actually have corridors and so forth. But they're already working up their designs for the fantasy-based version of it. Yeah, so it's really cool.
Awesome. Thanks. And see, that's why I asked.
Yeah. So Mike, what have you been doing gaming-wise?
I ran like Cthulhu Tech a couple weeks
Oh, of
back.
course, yes.
That's right, which both of you were in, along with Andrew and Aaron. So that was a pretty good time. Definitely good to explore that system a little bit more. Yeah, interesting. It wasn't my best game, but it seems like you guys had a pretty decent time.
I enjoyed myself.
Chig, I gave you like the best character ever.
Well, I mean, that is true.
Yeah. So just to inform everyone, Chig was effectively playing a Pokemon master. He was a sorcerer with a little fetch dudes who were running around causing mischief and whatnot. And also he was his kind of usual sleazy douchebag kind of character. So pretty much perfect.
Character only.
So that's what's been going on with me, and then like some Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, that sort of stuff. Chris, how about yourself? What's been going on over in Germany?
Um, we're hopefully going to get back into playing some Iron Kingdoms maybe next weekend, maybe the weekend after that, I think. So I'm finishing my conversion of Witchfire trilogy from D20 to the newer Iron Kingdom setting. Otherwise, I need to do some wargaming. So I recently got some new scenery. So I've now got some gaming modular terrain boards from a company called Eslo Scenery. They do some really good stuff. So it now means I actually have a 4x4 gaming table, which, if you're playing War Machine, is useful. Yep. I also got some scenery from Micro Art Studios. So this is some laser cut MDF, and you put it together. It's for I don't know if you've seen this skirmish game before called Volsung.
Nope.
And so that's kind of like a steampunk kind of game, kind of steampunk western. And it paints really well. It looks really good. It was a bit of a pain to put together at times because obviously you use a bit of PVA glue and you need to jam some bits together. But it's the first type of scenery I've put together like that. So I think it'll be good. They also do some really good other bits from that set. So again, Chig, for your gaming, maybe look at that as well. Again, it's kind of allows you to make modular walls and walkways and so forth. Oh, and I'm painting some Batman miniatures right now. So for the Batman miniatures game for my mate. So I've finished painting the Joker and finished off his goons, and then I've got Commissioner Gordon and a SWAT team and some police officers to do up. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Other than, is there any other gaming I want to get up to? Other than maybe planning a hangout game for Fading Suns at some point soon.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. So with that gaming update, I think it's time to move over to Onyx Path news and White Wolf news. I guess we're going to start the news with a bit of a sad note. So, for many years, about 8 years, I believe, the World of Darkness MMO has been worked on. But unfortunately, as of late or early April, they've officially canceled the WoD online game. So that's done, and unfortunately, a lot of people at CCP in Atlanta have gone on to do other things because they were laid off. So we wish them best of luck and all that. And it's really unfortunate that so much time and effort has gone into this, and it's all pretty much for naught. Maybe we'll see something in the future. Maybe they'll be able to use some of the assets that they developed for maybe a single player game or something like that. But that's all pretty much just speculation at this point. So it's pretty unfortunate, and again, wish everyone the best as they move on to other things. So, any other thoughts and opinions, guys, on that?
I think it's hard because obviously everyone has a lot of people. I think maybe less informed people have an opinion of how much time and effort's been put on this game, but various other games, you don't hear about until they're very close to some sort of alpha or beta. So I think the time frame in which the game's been worked on, I think it got announced 8 years ago, but I would say the active, real work on the game has only been for the last 5 or 6 years. I think while there's a lot of talk about, oh, well, you could just do a Kickstarter for it and you could finish it off, or they should definitely finish it off, is that you get to a point where while they have invested a lot of money into the game, I think, was it something like $50 million? There's a cutoff point which, you've got to think either where you've got to assess whether you can keep investing and you will get it to completion and start getting that money back, or you're not going to get to it. And it's a shame because from the visuals in the leaked manual and how they were describing it, they really did have some nice things in place. I think it was just a case of it's a very hard intellectual property to bring to the MMO world and do it justice, because it could have easily, if you want, everyone's made a World of Warcraft kind of knockoff, and that type of gaming is dying off in some respects, and it's not bringing back money to companies that are doing that. So CCP was right to aim high, and maybe right now it was too high for what they had. They might come back to it, and there's no reason why they can't come back to it when they have maybe more money to invest, or they've developed other technologies by that point, or they've got some other group that wants to invest with them. But they've got to do what's right now, which is also they've got to think about even their other employees. You can't be selfish about. You can't just focus on one thing at the expense of everyone else's job. So, it's a tough decision.
Yep, indeed. Chigg, you got anything?
It's sad to see it go, but I mean, they like Chris said, they have to do what's best for them as a company as a whole. So, I mean, I understand why they did it, but yeah, it's still kind of a bummer.
Indeed. But I think there is kind of a silver lining to all this, and that's the fact that, the licenses for the role-playing games and other aspects of the World of Darkness property have been dispersed, prior to all this going down. So we already have Onyx Path and Midnight Studios in place, doing a lot of good work. So we could be happy to see that the, games we really enjoy are just going to continue to grow.
that's another thing which is interesting, is because obviously people have commented about that and worried about it, about the future of those IPs. But you know, CCP can happily sit on that IP until they're in a position to reassess how they use it, because role-play gaming is perhaps the easiest media in which to develop IP. The classic World of Darkness is in no way dead anymore. It's evolving in a way that's more similar to the way that New World of Darkness evolves now. As in they're kind of breaching out of the established meta plot of ages past. So they're now exploring outside of that boundary, but still within the world of Vampire the Masquerade. So, it's great. I mean, CCP is going to be On Its Path Publishing is going to be bringing out another World of Darkness game soon. It's been announced that they're working on something. We have no idea what it is. Everyone's making jokes what it is. But for CCP, that's great, because this world is still active. It's still being developed. There are still going to be fans there. And we're going to be here when maybe they look at bringing World of Darkness to the MMO media again. So, I'm sure they're just going to sit on it until they find the right deal.
Yeah, probably, Chris. I mean, we've seen this in the past with what happened with FASA, essentially. They became an intellectual property holder in many ways. They stopped producing games, and they sold off a lot of the electronic rights to Microsoft for Crimson Skies, Shadowrun, and MechWarrior / BattleTech. Yeah. So, we've seen over time, those games, the tabletop games survived with licenses, going out there. And then we've seen everything come back, round circle. So they're producing video games again with MechWarrior Online, Shadowrun Returns, and also a Shadowrun Online game. So there's definitely a lot going on in that respect with those properties. So you never know. In 5 years, might see another MMO or might see some other types of games coming out.
Yeah, I would be shocked if we didn't eventually have another World of Darkness computer game of some sort.
Yeah, definitely. So, yep, in other news, Onyx Path was putting out quite a few different products. Necropolis DC is out for Kickstarter backers. We've got more condition cards, storyteller screens, and a lot of other stuff. And I think we'll talk about those a little bit more in a future episode, of course. And with that, let's move on over to the classic World of Darkness segment.
Classic World of Darkness.
All right, Chigg. We said we were going to do this. And the time has finally come.
Yeah, we've kind of been puttering around, dragging our feet to get to this, but yeah.
I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Indeed. I think it's tough, Chigg, because we came into this book with such high expectations. We really wanted to see where they were going to take this, and I'm not going to say it's a bad book, because it's definitely technically written very well. There's some very strong ideas in there, but it's not what we anticipated.
Yeah, they did set the bar rather high for this one, and I think maybe it was just a little too high for them to clear. Or maybe I set the bar too high for them based on the books that came out ahead of Conventionbook, Void Engineers Revised.
That's right. So, Conventionbook, Void Engineer is... It's not... Oh, damn, how do I want to put this? See, this is why we put off this review for so long, Chigg. There's so many emotions going on with this source book.
I understand. It's not the best of the revised convention books. I will go ahead and start out by saying that. In fact, of the revised convention books, it is definitely my least favorite.
Yeah, I would unfortunately concur with that. But it's so tough because these are the same writers that gave us the other convention books, Progenitors, Syndicate, and New World Order, which have all been great. And I don't know what happened with this one. Again, it's not a bad book. There's some great stuff in here. For example, This probably has the most clearly defined discussion of the Void Engineers' cosmology for the solar system and the theories regarding that that we've seen before.
Oh yeah, the cosmology chapter alone is amazing.
Exactly.
And explaining the difference between this type of umbra and that type of umbra is just it's been done before, but never this well.
Exactly. And the history section is a very good overview, which I found to be a lot more interesting than many other history chapters that you'll find in World of Darkness books. Particularly because it's different looks at exploration and kind of like human aspirations were just very strong, and I feel resonated with the entire Void Engineers concept.
Indeed, I agree. The history section, unlike other revised convention books, doesn't just cover the last 10 or 15 years. It's not just, well, we started 1,000,000 years ago at the dawn of civilization, and then some stuff happened, and here's a really detailed look at the last decade. It goes into not super fine detail. I mean, it's just a regular sized book, but it doesn't ignore the history.
Absolutely. And another great thing about this book is that it's very diverse in how it looks at both genders and other cultures, particularly the shifts in where the Void Engineers are recruiting nowadays. Less from, say, flyboy Air Force guys, and more looking at Chinese scientists, looking at people in Africa and that sort of thing, which is really just very interesting.
Yeah, agreed there as well. Yeah,
but there's that
It's a big but.
that one primary conceit about this whole book that we really disagree with, isn't there, Chigg? The fact that the Void Engineers, they almost feel like they're less scientists now and more. They're more militarized. In the aftermath of the Avatar storm, losing swaths of personnel, losing much of their space navy, they've become militarized, almost akin to Starship Troopers in some ways. And I'm more referring to the 1998 Paul Verhoeven film as opposed to the actual Robert Heinlein novel.
Right. It's kind of out of left field. The backstory being, hey, we lost all of our spaceships, so now we're all space marines. I really don't see the connection between cause and effect there.
Indeed. And another strange thing is that, despite the Void Engineers becoming more militarized and trying to, in this canonical context, create a more defined convention for themselves. That whole idea that was purported in Iteration X, Syndicate, and all these other convention books, that the Void Engineers might actually leave the Technocratic Union, is just completely invalidated in the first 2 pages of the source book, saying that the Void Engineers will never leave. Absolutely not. That would never happen. And I feel that's really, it's sort of a whitewashing of the situation. The Void Engineers have suffered greatly, and they're, as I would view it in the context of Mage the Ascension, looking at different conventions and how they treat the Void Engineers, they're really kind of getting the shit end of the stick, really.
Yeah, it's been around since the technocrats were not just the monolithic bad guys, that if any group was ever going to leave, it would be the Void Engineers. And like you said, in the first 3 or 4 pages, it says, no, Void Engineers would never, ever leave the Technocratic Union. Maybe this is just their internal dialogue between the characters in the Void Engineers. The grizzled veteran telling the new guy, "Hey, no, we need the backing. We need them as much as they need us." But to just come right out and say, "Hey, no, they would never ever leave," kind of invalidates decades of plot and possibility.
Yeah, it really does. I feel that it's really just a missed opportunity, because they could have gone into these different, fractious factions of the Void Engineers, and look at how they're interacting some of them might want to leave, some of them are traditional and want to stick with the technocracy. And there could be a lot of very interesting stories just within the convention itself that you could tell about that one story seed. So, yeah, I feel like it's really just a missed opportunity.
Well, the World of Darkness writers kind of have a history of this whole monolithic group thing. If we look at Vampire, when all of the gangrel decide, the clan of loners who don't interact with anybody decided as a group somehow to leave the Camarilla, or when the Stargazers left the werewolf, the heck's their court system called? I forget. When these large groups of individualists decided as a group to up and leave, or in this case to stick around, it kind of invalidates the characteristics of that group.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, there is some reasoning put into place for the Void Engineers becoming this sort of militarized faction, and that is this organization or entity called Threat Null. The book's pretty vague about it for the first 50 pages, but as you get further into it, and this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, but I think our listeners can handle it. Essentially what happened was that the Avatar Storm, when it occurred, turned all the technocrats in control and the Deep Umbra into spirits. And these guys are kind of coming back, and they're attacking the technocracy, particularly the Void Engineers. And they're this sort of faceless antagonist, kind of like how the technocracy was in the old first edition Mage.
Can I just say that's kind of interesting because you were saying you complained that the Void Engineers were kind of militarized. Is that maybe more of a reaction to this new threat they're now facing, as the Void Engineers have to reassess that they can't be just going out to the stars, the Umbra, wherever the hell, in their spaceships? And again, it's the way to focus the Void Engineers in a more local way is kind of it makes them a bit, well, maybe it makes them a bit more Ghostbusters in that sense, but, stopping the creatures of the Outer Dark, which happen to be, technocracy who've become weird.
Well, Chigg and I have some good
spirits.
ideas about Ghostbuster Void Engineers, but we'll get into that later.
Okay, cool.
Well, it just seems to me that, Threat Null, as it stands, they're a faceless and pretty weak villain, and the World of Darkness usually tries to take steps to have, deep and interesting antagonists. So in that respect, I just don't really like Threat Null. This is the first time that they are introduced to us in the meta plot, and it is it's just one source book, and there's only a couple pages really devoted to them. So it may just be that they're newly introduced, and it'll take a little while, like most World of Darkness things do. A couple source books later, there'll be something really cool that Chigg and I and others will really enjoy. The one interesting thing about them, about Threat Null, is that they hadn't found any Void Engineers amongst them, any former Void Engineers, which is a bit spooky. I'm not really sure what purpose that's supposed to serve, the overall design of the antagonist, but, it is another story seed to explore, at the very least, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, like you, I was not wowed and my hair was not blown back by Threat Null. It's an interesting idea. The whole, if you're in the Umbra for too long, you will become a spirit thing has always been around. So it even makes sense, historically. But I don't know. It's like you said, there was a lot of build up to, who is this crazy new threat from beyond the stars? And then it turns out the enemy was us all along. I mean, that's kind of lame. I don't know. I like you say though, maybe they'll do something amazing with it, and I'll be blown away.
Yeah, it could be. But I mean, Chigg, just your idea that you mentioned offhand once that maybe we're going to get to page 60 of the source book, and then Threat Null just doesn't even exist. This military, this right-wing faction just completely made it up to, prove that they need funding from the rest of the Technocratic Union. Would be hilarious and awesome.
I thought that was kind of where they were going at first, and then I got to it, and I was like, well, not so much, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's not really that it's a bad idea. It's just we set the bar so high for this, and that's one of the things that just didn't pay off. And there's some other stuff in the source book. It has some spaceship construction rules, which are pretty cool on paper, but they don't add anything too mechanically interesting. It's just, some basic dice pool rolls and a very, basic framework for designing capital ships and that sort of thing for the Void Engineers. Which, Chigg, as you pointed out, it's a little superfluous. These ships really just travel at the speed of plot and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's not something that your player characters are really going to have. I mean, unless you're using the rules to play a Star Trek game, then I don't see your average group of mage players having access to an interstellar starship.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really one of the secondary effects of this book when you're looking at it is that it doesn't do enough, I feel, to shift focus back to Earth. Because that's really what we've done with, or what writers have done with Revised Mage and now with the, Mage 20th, is they're looking back at Earth, the cradle of humanity, and that is where all the action's happening. It's kind of interesting to go out into deep space and maybe have some adventures, battling against the Nefandi of the Red Circle or something. But that should only be a side plot, which should directly affect activities and plots and agendas that are all taking place back on Earth. And again, the source book doesn't do enough to, I understand it's the Void Engineers and that they are the space faction, but they can do a lot more than that. And I think that was another missed opportunity with this source book.
Yeah, it tries, I think maybe it tries to go both ways at once and winds up not doing either terribly well. It doesn't have a clear focus on whether it wants to be about Among the Stars Void Engineers or Stuck on the Mudball Engineers,
Yep, definitely. So I think that brings us to...
Oh, wait. Sorry, before we go on, I want to say that the page of medals for the Void Engineers is probably the biggest waste of space I've seen in any White Wolf book.
I would concur, yes.
There's no reason for this to be in this book.
Yeah. And that was also on the page after the propaganda poster for joining the Void Engineers army or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Space Marines,
exactly. Yes, I would concur with that assertion, Chigg. So I think this kind of brings us to the point that Chigg and I are at, where we got the source book and we don't really agree with everything. We can't. I wouldn't really recommend people go running out to get it. Although there are definitely some redeeming aspects to it. But Chigg, I think we wanted to kind of go over some of our own ideas regarding the Void Engineers and really just a different way to take them. Should people be unsatisfied with using space commandos in their games? So, what are the Void Engineers really about? Because they're not about space. They're about, exploration and the aspirations of humanity. They're a technocratic convention that looks to the future more than any other. And in some ways, because this noble pursuit of theirs, they really skirt the edges of the technocratic timeline in many ways.
Yeah, while the other four conventions look to the future, they look to the future of innovation and technology and things and development. The Void Engineers look to the future of humanity and where people are going, not just things and toys. And I think that sets them apart from the rest of the Union.
Yeah, absolutely. And this puts them in conflict a lot of times with the other conventions and the Technocratic Union as a whole. And especially, in the wake of the Avatar Storm, I would think, they've lost much of their navy. Dozens of ships are lost in distant parts of the solar system. They've lost a lot of manpower, capital, and a lot of knowledge. That's another important and key element, is that they've lost a lot of people that know the inner workings of this cosmology that they've been developing. Overall, I think that would not result in a shift of focus to become more militarized and try to rebuild that space program, because first off, they have less people, they have less money in that case, and less funding from the rest of the technocratic union. And I think it would resonate very well with modern day aspects of space exploration, with how NASA has had so many funding budget cuts and funding changes, and how the reality of space travel is looking less and less doable, really. That the technocracy would not allow the Void Engineers to spend all this extra money on these capital warships and that sort of thing, meaning that what few ships the Void Engineers now build are smaller exploration vessels. Maybe they'll be doing some space mining in the local area, local vicinity. But a lot of their aspirations as a convention have been cut short as a result of the Avatar storm.
Right. They're not going out to Jupiter and fighting monsters in the big swirly red eye of Jupiter anymore. But there's still room in the local solar system for them to build, a base at the Lagrange points for research and development, or to make some little tugboat type ships to go from here to there within the local system. Scaling it down and scaling it back in the space exploration side of things makes sense, both in universe and, to reflect real life. So,
yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that the Void Engineers, they are definitely about exploration, humanity, and the future. So they also want to definitely protect humanity. And one of the best ways to do this is not by exploring some asteroid belt off of Pluto, which is so distant and far away, but it might actually be best to help shore up defenses and stabilize Earth itself, which kind of brings in a lot of interesting ideas for how research and manpower has shifted within the Void Engineers. So really, the way I see it, there's 3 core tiers of gameplay that would work perfectly for the Void Engineers. The highest tier is definitely that sort of localized space travel, exploring those kind of lunar, maybe Martian threats, maybe doing some stuff with space mining, which I think can bring in a lot of very interesting horror stories itself when you look at some popular films such as Event Horizon or Aliens, or really more Alien, the original. So that gives you a lot of options right there. The second tier, I'd say kind of the mid-tier, is looking a lot at research that the Void Engineers are doing in probably the more distant parts of planet Earth, maybe in volcanoes, deep sea research, kind of like the film The Abyss, polar research like The Thing. So there's a lot of very interesting horror themes that you can bring in that way, which I think will definitely enhance the overall look of the Void Engineers. And by placing these kind of extra research facilities and that sort of thing back on Earth, that gives them a lot more reason to play with the other conventions and see what kind of interesting stories and perhaps conflicts come about with that. Because if we're doing deep sea research, for example, definitely the progenitors are going to want to have their own personnel at those same facilities. Just to make things interesting as well, I would say a lot of these facilities might be abandoned previous research facilities from maybe like the 50s or the 60s that the technocracy made, and they're now being repersonneled, given what's been going on.
Sure. Sweep the mothballs out of that old C lab and toss the progenitors and the iterators down there. They can't get to other dimensions anymore to do their crazy magical science experiments. So we got to get them away from humanity, where, 1, the consensus would not allow that in the first place, and 2, if anything blows up, it'll take out the city. So, put them at the bottom of the ocean, put them in a deep crust lab somewhere deep within the bowels of the earth, and see what kind of fun and exciting creatures they can summon up down there.
On the point with the whole Void Engineers being more based on Earth, the other thing is, and how that reflects, modern day scientific research, space research and everything, is if you look at a lot of the larger kind of discoveries going on right now. So whether you're looking at the Large Hadron Collider or various other kind of particle experiments, or even to do with planetary detection. All these things happen within our local space, or even just on Earth. So I think another way to look at how you can play the Void Engineers is that a lot of the discoveries that they can make are about bringing something that's very distant down onto our world, and I think that you can use that because maybe they've got to the point where the real discoveries they can do don't require them to go flying off into the distant void, but the more important discoveries can actually still be done just on Earth, and in fact they're even greater ones because they're more dimensional in the sense of discoveries of how our world is connected to other places and other energies and forces and so forth. I was going to say possibly another great idea, along with Mike, when you said about Void Engineers having bases like deep sea and so forth. Look at Pacific Rim, maybe. That means you can look at stories where you do go into kind of crazy realms, is because all the stuff you require for that is all very Earth based, as in it is just gateways and or fissures within our dimension, the very fabric of our reality on Earth.
Yep, absolutely. I definitely agree. Now for the kind of final street level tier of gameplay, I definitely...
My favorite level.
Yeah, definitely. And this kind of speaks to how Chigg and I like some of the media that we enjoy and the kind of like heroes that we root for in a lot of these stories. We're definitely looking at the kind of downtrodden hero. He doesn't have much of a budget. He's trying to get from one paycheck to paycheck. But we're calling these guys kind of the cleaners. And essentially what they are is that they're these individuals. You can think of like Ghostbusters, Constantine, or maybe even the Super Mario Brothers movie, where they go into these different situations and they have to seal up maybe abyssal intrusions, that sort of thing, from a Lasombra vampire, clear out nests of were-rats, and other things which are affecting, different, not only Earth itself, but other dimensions, that sort of thing, intrusions into the Umbra, the Abyss, maybe even the Dreaming, if you could work in changelings into some situations. And these guys are pretty neat because, it allows you to, work with a lot more of the, down and dirty kind of technocratic individuals, maybe the Men in Black or the, action scientists of the progenitors nowadays. I think it's just a really neat idea. And Chigg, this is really kind of your brainstorm right here, your brainchild. So maybe you could, kind of tackle a little bit more.
Well, it only makes sense that if you have, incursions from the dark Umbra, ghosts, or if you have crazy spirits who are running around causing trouble from the middle Umbra, and the werewolves aren't in the phone book, then you have to have somebody who's ready to stand up and protect reality from these weird little monsters who are ready to eat people and lower property value. And, the New World Order is busy with traditionalists and other mages. So really the only people in the Technocratic Union who have the knowledge and the equipment and the ability to prevent dimensional incursions of this nature are the Void Engineers.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things is that when you look at the technocracy, they do want to protect humanity, but just saving people's lives and that sort of thing, that's kind of maintenance. It doesn't really forward their overall agenda. It doesn't create new technology. So it stands to reason to me that really the Void Engineers are not going to be getting much funding for this, perhaps from the Syndicate and other conventions, because really this is all basically overhead. And the Syndicate themselves, I'd say, are definitely all about cutting overhead.
Oh, sure, yeah. These guys are not going to have the latest plasma rifles and body armor and this, that, and the other. They'll be cobbling together whatever they can with their own abilities and meager budgets. So, yeah, it'll be a very street-level campaign, You'll have the unlicensed particle accelerator on your back to take out that wraith over there in the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you run into a situation, you got your plasma pistol, but you forgot the rope.
Never forget the rope.
No, definitely
20
not.
feet.
So, I mean, that's kind of our basic ideas for how the Void Engineers can be portrayed. And I think these ideas could work in addition to those put into the convention book itself. It's not one or the other. You could definitely have just a small militarized segment of the Void Engineers existing now, which I could see being kind of a cool idea. But I feel that there should be these other ideas, other kind of interesting, scientific research aspects to them, and then also just kind of the more street level maintenance that we were just discussing. So I don't know, Chigg, do you have any other further ideas about the Void Engineers? Any kind of like, big concepts or ideological points that you'd like to share?
That's everything that I wanted to say.
So, I mean, there we go. Chris, what do you think about all this?
Obviously, I've not read the book. I've not had time to. But yeah, I think compared to the other conventions, I think I would have thought the focus of this book would have been kind of similar to the way the Progenitors book went, with kind of the action scientists set on Earth, and I'd say kind of like you can imagine the street level group, while they're considered superfluous and just doing cleanup, could make amazing discoveries, because again they come across some entity or some phenomena that's not been seen before, maybe because the Avatar storm has been and gone by. So they could be an overlooked faction in that sense. It'd be interesting to really see, or I don't know, maybe, I mean, the militarized Void Engineers, I think would be better to be portrayed as kind of like doing a last ditched defense, because they need to do it in order to prepare to regrow the convention so they can go back out and make discoveries. So I think there's a lot of interplay with the idea that you've got a cleanup group, the group that's doing military defense and preparation, even though they really want to go off and travel to Saturn and kill dream speakers on the surface of whatever moon there. And maybe there is a group of Void Engineers that are all kind of like just to do with satellites and telescopes and particle accelerators, doing more Earth-based research and kind of pushing the thing that you don't have to go away off into the stars to make big discoveries. So if the convention book doesn't have that kind of, isn't as broad as that, and is a bit too focused on the militarized Void Engineers with plasma rifles and power armor and stuff, that's kind of a bit lame.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, it definitely mentions these other factions. Like, there is a mention of like a deep sea faction in the Void Engineers convention book, but it's one little tiny paragraph and that sort of thing. So it kind of mentioned that there's these other groups, but yeah, it's mostly focused on the elite Space Marines. So yeah, there we go. That's definitely some like additional ideas that you can use for Void Engineers and that sort of thing. I think they're pretty cool. I would definitely love to play kind of a cleaners game. I'm not sure if they'd actually be mages though. They might be more of the enlightened individuals and that sort of thing, as opposed to the actual sphere wielding mages themselves. But yeah, definitely some cool stuff. So I think with that, we've fully covered the Void Engineers themselves, and let's move on over to the secret frequency.
He took the stairs.
Okay, so for the secret frequency this show, something I found as I was trawling Google Plus, because a really good. I think we need to give full credit to the suppressed transmissions Google Plus community for some. Always seems to have good ideas, good stories, and Fortean type stories pop up, and that's where I saw this one. So this concerns the hypothesis of phantom time. So this is the idea. Dr. Hans Ulrich Nimitz introduces a paper of the phantom time hypothesis, and this is the idea that that hundreds of years ago, our calendar was polluted, corrupted, modified, whatever, and that there is 297 years that are unaccounted for. So in other words, we suddenly jumped forward in time. By that, we didn't physically jump forward in time, just the way it's been recorded has changed. So this means that while we may think it's the year 2005, for example, it's actually the year 1708. And of course, this hypothesis is apparently not just the indulgence of crackpots, and is based in real kind of, historical evidence. So the hypothesis suggests that in the early Middle Ages, so this is 614 to 911 AD, that period never happened, and that time period was added in due to a misrepresentation of documents, a change in the calendar used, and even a falsification of documents. So this means there are many artifacts and documents that are attributed to this time period, and actually they come from different time periods that straddle that made up time period. So they actually date before then, or technically by our incorrect calendar date after then, when actually they occur around that point where those extra years are kind of inflate our calendar. So this means, like, for example, Charlemagne, who's a king in Europe, was actually a fictional character. Apparently, this isn't just some crazy idea, though. So there are historians that are apparently plagued by numerous falsified documents that date from the Middle Ages. So, and this was apparently a subject of an archaeological conference in München in Germany in 1986, where in his lecture, Horst Fuhrmann, who is president of the German Historical Society, he described how that the Roman Catholic Church during the Middle Ages went about fabricating documents before certain great moments occurred. So either this means that they had some amazing foresight, or they made up the documents to support events that never occurred. And thus, they could say, well, this occurred in this year, when that entire time period never existed. So this is what aroused the curiosity of other researchers, and this leads to the idea that this issue of missing time is due to the origin of the Gregorian calendar that we use today. So the Gregorian calendar, if you go back, was established in 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th to replace the outdated Julian calendar, which had been used since the 45 BC. So the issue is that the Julian year has 10.8 minutes too long, and by Herodotus' Illich's math, there would be a discrepancy in the amount of time that had actually passed compared to the actual number of solar years that had passed, and so you would slowly accrue a 13-year discrepancy, when actually there's actually only a 10-day error. So this changes how you count the number of years, and that, if you assume that it's to do with how you count years, it gets a bit more complicated. But the end point is that they assumed that with this 10-day error, that 10-day error would only accrue over 1,257 years, but actually it meant 1,627 years had passed, because there's a difference in the number of days that pass. So there's this missing kind of counting of years that have to be established. So apparently there is evidence for this. They went looking for evidence of their their hypothesis. So apparently there's a gap in time which relates to the building of Constantinople in the year 558 AD to 908 AD. A gap in the doctrine of faith and the evolution of the theory of meaning of purgatory, and so forth and so forth. So they found some examples where they believe there are examples which support their hypothesis of this missing 297 years. This is quite an outlandish and extraordinary hypothesis. Essentially, it means that we're in the wrong year. It's not the year 2014. You have to minus 297 off there because of just poor mathematics being involved in the accounting of things, or it was done on purpose to establish facts or to establish events to support some secret agenda of some political religious faction. So, guys, what do you make of this?
Well, this whole discrepancy in how the Julian to Gregorian calculation is done, converting from one to the other, brings up some interesting ideas and questions about time travel in general, with exactly how it's calculated. And we know that in the World of Darkness, at least off the top of my head, there's a time sphere in Mage, and there's also Temporis for the True Bruja. So, you kind of have to wonder, when these guys are saying, I want to time travel to X and X, so-and-so date, how do they really do that? How do they really figure it out? Definitely, kind of bears some discussion before you really kind of jump into that in your game. Because it would be pretty hilarious if you jumped to the wrong date and had a little Back to the Future kind of situation.
Well, yeah, that's quite good because, as I said in that article, that actual, historians have to be careful when they date certain things because they actually have to check when an event is the date of events against different documents, depending upon which calendar they use, or referencing to other dates which they actually have, the date in the Gregorian calendar. And so if a group of time travelers haven't taken that into account, they could time travel back saying they wanted to go kill some historical figure or some person they've got to hunt down in the past, and find that person has not been born yet or has already died, and could potentially either you could have a whole thing where they misinterpret this to mean that this person never existed, and but it's actually just them misinterpreting the evidence that's actually there because they've just gone to the wrong time. It's not that the person didn't exist; they're just not there when they've gone to the wrong time period, and so the person, of course, isn't there. So you can really do some fun with that.
Absolutely. Another cool idea is that, looking at this article, it seems like they're primarily looking at European and Christian documents to discover this issue. Not so much documents outside, and we do know that at this time, of course, in the Middle East and the Arab areas, they had their own calendar, very good about keeping track of things. And you also have the Mayan calendar as another reference. So what if these 300 years only occurred in one region? What if they only occurred in Europe? What would that do to some of the people, say, traveling in and out of this area? Maybe they go in, and in one region only 10 years takes place, but in Europe 20 years took place. When they come out, they've changed quite a bit. This could provide some very interesting ideas for World of Darkness game dealing with this sort of a time bubble and that sort of thing, which is an idea you sometimes see in science fiction and that sort of thing. But the exact reason for doing this could be pretty neat. Maybe they're making this sort of a time bubble, accelerating time in one area so they can complete a ritual more swiftly, which would normally take 50 years, but now it's only going to take an hour, that sort of thing. Could be pretty neat. And then when the characters walk in, they have plenty of time to try to stop it.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article for this actual hypothesis, and obviously more into the basis of the hypothesis and arguments against it. And one of the key arguments against it is that the one thing which is very easy to use as a reference point are astrological events, because those things don't change very quickly, and so they're very predictable, and you can work backwards and figure out when events occurred. So those are fairly good. And then there's some other particular things, with where particular dates are given with respect to like the equinox or to particular solstice and so forth. So those are all quite important. But you can again make use of that. I think with the missing time that again, when you said time bubbles, you could maybe work into that the need to have particular astrological events occur when you need them, or to remain active for a longer period of time. So I'm thinking like, for example, in Dark Ages Vampire with a particular solar eclipse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you can make use of that kind of idea. And of course, all these kind of time bubbles or loss of time, entire time periods not occurring. And that works very well with regard to, say, for example, in Mage the Awakening, where there have been attempts to create a new Atlantis or some other, magical construct, whatever, and it fails and it falls apart, and you literally have to delete an entire region of the world or an entire time period away to correct things. Also, the thing that could make dating be misleading on the date of a time period or the date of, or something is because magical items may be far older or far newer than what, say, carbon dating returns. So, if it's made of wood, the ring patterns and all that kind of stuff. So you have all that element that magic and so forth can cause real anomalies in how you date things. And of course, other good examples of I guess you could use the whole time anomaly as an example this could tie in really well with is it the Lord of 1,000 Leaves, King of 1,000 Leaves?
The Prince of 10,000 Leaves, I believe.
Yeah, from Mage the Awakening, Boston Unveiled. And so that's the idea of this. It's a book that is not yet complete, and it's the idea that every time it's discovered, it's becoming more and more complete, and as it's being revealed and being used by mages, it unleashes entities and phenomena related to an alternate timeline, an alternate Earth. And the idea is that when this book is complete, it'll reshape the world into this alternate world. Actually, quite interesting. The book of the Prince of 1,000 Leaves and that idea of this alternate time period is also very similar to the idea that of can't remember the name of the book, but it's an idea they use in Exalted, where there's this book which everyone thinks is correct, but actually, as you go forward in time, the book is becoming it only becomes more and more complete as more people work on it over time. So yeah, time travel and things you can do some very interesting. You can do some clever things with, and with artifacts that defy when you think they should be made due to temporal anomalies. A good example of an idea of a temporal anomaly is in the Hyperion Cantos and the Time Tombs, where there are these tombs on this world which seem to be in a state of in some form of entropy field, and they're actually tombs from the far future sent into the past, and as they catch up with the time period they're from again, the tombs will once more be filled with the beings that were buried there for whatever purpose. Oh, and also all this time stuff fits in really well with Demon of Descent. So in Demon Descent, the core setting, the default city setting you're given is Seattle, and that has different shards of time existing at the same together, and the demons can move between these time periods, and these time periods a lot. So you may go to 1974 Seattle, and it doesn't know that the rest of the world exists in the year 2014. If you try to leave that Seattle, you'll just return to that Seattle. So there's no way to leave it. But all those different time shards are interrelated. So you could go back to one in the past and start creating a cover, or start creating doing things which you can then take advantage for in the present. And of course, the God Machine freaking hates all this, and it's all one big mess up that it's trying to correct, because it's just pure chaos. Yeah.
I like it. Chig, hit me with the changeling explanation.
I got nothing for changeling, actually. I'm trying to figure out why somebody would do this in the first place, why they would hide 3 centuries or erase 3 centuries or what have you. And the best idea that I can come up with for the old world of darkness, given the connections to the church and the calendar and all that, is Prester John.
I'm not familiar with him. Who is Prester John?
Well, Prester John is not a World of Darkness figure. It's a real world myth or figure or something of that nature. He was a supposed patriarch, ruler of a Christian kingdom in Africa in the 4th century. So that kind of ties in with the timeline here, unless I'm completely missing that as well. Yeah, it's a little off, but we'll fudge it. So the idea here is that when explorers from Europe and Christendom were traveling to Africa and to Central Asia and all that, they came across, they were bringing the word of God with them, and they came to a legendary kingdom of Prester John, where, hey, turns out they were already Christian. They already knew all this stuff, so there was no need for them to spread their Christian love and conversion there. So clearly, since this is a major paradox, time itself came and erased the centuries where his kingdom existed.
Intriguing. Well, is that it for the secret frequency?
I think time periods and lost time and time travel is an interesting kind of plot, kind of basis for a plot. It's interesting when you've got characters like vampires, which obviously can exist for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and you can actually have a vampire who actually was there and goes, no, that did actually happen, so I don't know why you think it didn't happen, or is in on the whole thing and doesn't reveal that this entire time period is just made up. Maybe he slept through it, which makes it really complicated.
Yeah.
The other thing is, obviously, you get into the interesting thing of, say, with Geist the Sin Eaters, is maybe this time there's no evidence for this time period. Maybe it never did occur, or it was deleted from reality somehow, and yet in the underworld there are the undead remnants, reflections of this time period that never existed, and of these people that never lived, and that in itself then creates interesting paradoxes. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I think that's it for the secret frequency, so let's move on over to the new World of Darkness.
World of Darkness 2.0.
All right, Chris, we've had 2 pretty huge releases for the new World of Darkness, both Blood and Smoke and Demon the Descent, and you've taken it upon yourself to thoroughly read and review these, so, I don't know, what do you want to talk about?
Let's start with Blood and Smoke, because I think it's maybe the easy one to first of all address.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Blood and Smoke is essentially a second edition Vampire the Requiem. And I'll first of all, I'm going to bring up my only criticism with the book straight away, which is I'm not a fan of the layout in some places. I find it a bit confusing with where they go from like where they have section breaks with their with their double columns and so forth. So
Oh
it gets a
yes,
bit
I did notice
confusing,
that.
very hard to follow by eye. Um, so that's my main critique there. Otherwise, I think it's pretty much now. You know, I, I always, I can't say I hate Vampire the Masquerade because, I started off with it like however many years back when Revised came out. That's what I picked up back in 1990, what, six, seven, eight, whatever year. Anyway, and, I've played plenty of Dark Ages, well, Vampire the Dark Ages, and love it for that. And Requiem, we've always said Requiem always had a hard job because after the reboot, I won't say reboot. Reboot's a bit unfair to it. I would say remix, because it really pared down the vampire game to deliver try to deliver an experience which is really about being a vampire and living as a vampire and dealing with those things, rather than getting too lost in heady, massive, plot arcs and things which really means that you lose focus of the things that give you the horror of being a vampire. And as the books came out, some of them weren't great, some of them were a bit dry, but they brought out a whole slew of books which were all really optional and built up the setting. And I would say Blood and Smoke really grabs from all of those books and is able to boil it down into what is quite a fun read and delivers a vampire game that is now, I think, is pretty much pretty separate from Masquerade now. I think
Extremely, it's extremely different.
yeah. So, Mike, I guess we should go through like what the biggest differences are now between this and Requiem and what really push it even further away from Masquerade. Um,
Yeah.
so, shall we start with the clans? How they've updated the clans?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so first of all, this book kind of jumps straight into it. It doesn't waste pages and pages on trying to labor what the game is about. It pretty much just here are the clans, and it really gets you into what they are and into the covenants. The biggest changes for the clans is revising their descriptions to be a bit more evocative. I would say compared to reading Guild Halls of the Deathless before this book, this one was far more fun to read. The main update for the clans, though, is obviously going to be in some of the disciplines, but also in their clan curse, which is now called a Bane. They're just far better. I think the biggest change people will note is maybe the Gangrel Bane is a lot more playable, because the old one was basically made them essentially stupid. You didn't get your intelligence bonus on certain things, or it was docked. Whereas now, these Banes I think are far more interesting, and obviously working with conditions and so forth. And that gives you the first hint of how things have been changed, because they've brought over something from Changeling the Lost, which is the idea of Banes. So in Changeling Lost, you had Banes and I'm trying to think of the other thing, Banes and
Contracts.
something else.
Oh,
No, it was the thing that as your character got more powerful and weird, they had weaknesses manifest, and that's essentially what this is you get Banes manifesting due to your relating to your blood potency to a certain extent, and also to your humanity. So I think the curses, these Banes is the first update. The other thing they've really brought in and kind of brought back to a certain extent, they were introduced in Dance Macabre, weren't they, Mike? The Mask and Dirge.
yes, sir. Yep.
And again, they're just a great guideline on to. I say guideline. it works into this whole thing that there are now nudge systems. I mean, God Machine Chronicle introduces conditions and tilts, and those are essentially nudges on how to push you into playing and push you into playing to lose. And again, Mask and Dirge supports that kind of nudge system. So again, your Mask is how you present yourself to the world and to humanity, and Dirge is how you live your undead life and what it means to you. So again, it's kind of like Nature and Demeanor from Old World Darkness, but I don't think it's as say limited.
Well, I'd actually say that Mask and Dirge is probably more defined in some ways, because your Mask is what kind of your role-playing aspect as you're dealing with the mortal world, and then the Dirge is when you're dealing with the undead world. So you kind of have guidelines in those two basic situations, as opposed to Nature and Demeanor, where am I supposed to be using my demeanor all the time? Do I kind of just have my nature spritzel in, that sort of thing? Those were pretty vague in a lot of ways, and it was difficult, I feel, to really, just from glancing at those two aspects, figure out how you're supposed to play your character. That was usually defined by your character's actual background and that kind of further write-up.
Yeah. The other thing, of course, they've introduced, and I think we're going to see this kind of concept returning in the other World of Darkness splats they turn up. We also have touchstones. So a touchstone essentially is a person, place, or thing that ties your vampire to humanity. So if the more you interact and make use of your touchstones, it enables you to kind of conserve and grow your humanity. So again, this is really important to labor, is that humanity is now not about how good a person you are. It is not the same as the old morality systems. Humanity is about how well does a vampire present themselves as human. So you can be an evil son of a bitch, but have high humanity because you conduct yourself in a manner that means humans don't realize that you are a blood-drinking monster. So obviously that also relates, because I mean, it's at this point, because Mike, we played through a God Machine Chronicles game. We did that hangout game, and again, morality system there was so different because it's a post-traumatic stress reaction to either you doing horrible things or witnessing horrible things. And so again, this is a post-traumatic stress for a vampire when you do things or witness things it's revealing to the vampire and reminding the vampire that they're not human and how they cope with that.
Yeah, precisely. I think this is where we're getting into the huge difference between Masquerade and Requiem. Just at a glance, they're both games about vampires dealing with humanity, but they're dealing with it in a very, very different way in each game. Vampire the Masquerade has that sort of Victorian ideals and that kind of ideas of almost sainthood if you have Humanity 10. As opposed to this, where, as it says in the books, if you're Humanity 10, you're just a very, very good character actor. And a lot of the, the issues, the breaking points, are dealing with things that remind you that you're not human. And that's how it can be hard to sort of keep up that cover almost. At Humanity 9, if you just see humans eating food, that reminds you that you're no longer mortal. You don't need that sort of thing. And at Humanity 7, if you spend a week without human contact, you begin to realize slowly that you're no longer human. And I would actually, there's a bunch of breaking points where it's a breaking point if you don't have human contact for an extended period of time. And I would actually play those fairly loose. I wouldn't just have like the straight up timer, that sort of thing. It'd be more like, if you've been trapped in, let's say, an undead council meeting of some sort. Perhaps you're exploring some old ruins of Rome, let's say, for weeks on end, dealing only in kindred lore. Because if you're, even vampires just watching TV or something like that, they could still kind of keep up that sort of mortal almost training or practice. But I think it's really just being completely cut off is really when you should use those.
Yeah, but that's important because that relates then to touchstones, because a touchstone doesn't have to be a person or a place, it can be a thing. So it could be your interest in maybe just an interest in the longevity of your favorite soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, watching a soap opera is a very human thing. So it's things like that. And I think that's really important because this comes back to something which, in my own Vampire the Requiem game, Sam's character, she plays a Deva who obviously, spikes the drinks of patrons at his club, so it makes it easier to feed and so forth. But the argument was that the wonderful argument she came up with back, this is like ages before any of this has come out, right, is that her character indulging in the use of drugs, in a certain extent, makes her character more human than vampires that don't do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so again, that's kind of, it's this reinforcement of being more human, not whether you're a good person. Drug use and spiking people's drinks and so forth is a really horrible thing to do, but even humans do horrible things. So
yep, absolutely. And another cool thing, just to cover the mechanics, when you lose humanity, mm-hmm. you have the option of gaining a Bane and a Beat, which
yes.
means that you can kind of, you can get Beats for more experience, but also add these extra Banes and weaknesses to your vampire, which is another kind of interesting difference between Masquerade and Blood and Smoke, is that vampires are far, far less defined. There's a lot of ways to kind of customize or come up with more unique appearances and creations of vampires. Slightly off topic, there's segments in the book discussing revenants, which are kind of ghouls turned into vampires, and I think there's some other caveats to them.
Yeah.
Also, there's posthumous embraces,
which is very much like the Mekhet, because that was introduced in the Mekhet clan book.
Yes, precisely. So someone who's already dead being turned into a vampire. So there's all these different ways that the kindred can be created, which is different than Masquerade, where there's really just the one straight-up embrace. And that kind of gives you a lot more play options and makes them, as I said before, uncertain. There's more mystery about them.
Yeah, I would say with the Banes, this comes back to the thing of like how we've always said that each World of Darkness game has you can kind of define a World of Darkness game on what it's trying to say about how a person's soul is being corrupted. And that's the cool thing about Banes, is that you as a player have a customization element in how you want to represent your vampire's curse and how it reflects the corruption of their soul. And I think that's really cool to play with, because you can then see getting particular Banes is like, yeah, that really fits with how much of a bastard I am now. Other things we can pick up on, there's been, within the mechanics, I would say, again, before even getting to disciplines or any of that stuff, we've now got, they've changed how vampires are affected by injuries now. So before there was a difference between being shot by a gun and being stabbed or having a knife in you. They've basically made vampires a lot more resilient, I would say, mm-hmm. and a lot more capable of taking on people en masse. So essentially you feel a bit more like a monster. I mean, you're not going to be anything compared to a werewolf still. And we can just say the things that Stu Wilson's put out on werewolves, that makes them horrifically scary. But yeah, again, the core mechanics of vampires have been improved. So we've also got more rules on like vampires tasting blood. There's more stuff to do with that. Vampires now have an element of night sight. They can, and depending upon their blood potency, are more able to distinguish between different blood, blood samples, whatever, and distinguish the connections between different blood samples. So they can tell who sired who and so forth. They can also they have a greater ability to smell and hear heartbeats of people and all those things like that, which you always see in vampire media, where you suddenly the vampire's vision changes. They can see all the veins in someone. They really focus in on someone's pulsing vein, and they can hear that person's heartbeat. So to have all that now within Requiem, I think really again reinforces the animalistic element of these hunters. There's also some modifications on how your predatory aura, so that's now more of a thing, and that it doesn't just happen on the first meeting between kindred. I never used it that way. I always had it when kindred met when they weren't expecting to meet, because it represents that territorial nature of these monsters. And how you have it manifest means that you can have the beast manifest as a monster, or as being seductive, or as being a competitor. And so these work with different conditions and how vampires interact with each other, or how they go about hunting you when you make a feeding roll. Anything else you want to say, Mike, that you've spotted in the early rules there? Because I know you said about revenants there.
No.
Oh, the kiss. They've updated the kiss. So obviously, the kiss has more of an effect on mortals now. So I think that they've put more work into the fact that so you've now got the swooning condition, and there's more of a supernatural element to how vampires are able to essentially brainwash people into wanting to be fed upon, or they want to be fed upon over time. They've also added in how blood potency affects the amount of damage, not only the amount of damage, but the type of damage you're taking from sunlight. So I think there's a certain interplay between your blood potency and your humanity on how you're able to daywalk or how long you sleep. So again, there are certain definite advantages to be had with various combinations of your attributes. Obviously, they've elaborated more on blood sympathy and detecting connections between people, and more on blood addiction and blood bonds. Is there anything else I can say on that? I think that's the core of it there. So I would say a core vampire before you get to the disciplines, I think is far more interesting now, and quite distinct from what you play in Masquerade, where you've only got a few things which really point you out as being a vampire. Now there's quite a lot of things that can point show how vampiric you are. Again, the thing is, we've also said in God Machine Chronicles, the breaking points can be defined as a conversation between the player and the storyteller. So you can add breaking points on here to further define how you view your vampire's Requiem. Because Mike, when you said about the Banes and how you gain a Bane, you can gain a Bane. Did you say that you can also gain a Bane to ignore the breaking point in future?
I don't remember if that was a rule, but
that's how it works.
Sounds like an awesome one. So even if it isn't, go with it.
You can. So if there's a Bane that you think you're getting tired of it, a breaking point, which is just like, I think my vampire's completely done with that. You can instead take on a Bane and in future just ignore that breaking point.
Interesting.
I think that's really cool.
Yep.
I think that's really cool. Sorry, go back to the change of the thing. It's taboos. It's Banes and taboos. So that's what it is. Just because I'm going through the book in order, they've brought a lot of stuff from the Covenant books into the core book. So we now have a lot of Carthian merits to represent Carthian law. So that's now better defined, I feel. It's more playable. And again, you've got numerous other things. They've also really pushed forward the fact that there are certain merits that allow vampires to claim dual membership between different covenants. And so when you look at the list of how you can set up in what is the society of vampires like, they've put a bit more work in defining other societies other than the typical masquerade-like feudal setups. They've given a bit of description there. So, the merits are all fine. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that's made it in and remained there. There's also a kindred dueling, so there's some fighting styles which are particular to kindred, which is all about making the right swipes at tendons and arteries and so forth, so you do more damage. Which I kind of like. That plays up for the Invictus. You can see that being useful for settling disputes. And also, riding the wave is a fighting style where your character gives themselves over to the beast, and they understand how to use it as a true weapon. That is pretty scary. So disciplines, yeah.
Disciplines, all right. They're a bit different. Definitely adjusted for the new mechanics, especially the combat disciplines. But I think the three that I found most interesting were probably Animalism, Protean,
Hell yes.
and also actually Celerity, because it's back, but it's way better than it was Masquerade.
Okay. Starting with Celerity, and I think at this point we can talk about all the physical disciplines.
Oh, sure.
They have a more active effect now, even if you don't invoke them directly using
right,
blood.
So with Celerity, as you may remember in Vampire the Masquerade, it was a bit of a nightmare where spending a bunch of blood points, you would get all these additional actions. It would really slow down combat, and typically everyone pretty much wanted it if they were going to be doing a lot of fighting, that sort of thing. So with the new Requiem Celerity, new Blood and Smoke one, there's, I believe, just 3 effects, and you can spend 1 blood point to activate one of those, or multiple blood points to activate some of them simultaneously. Those 3 effects are basically, moving up in the initiative order, increasing, like doubling or quadrupling your actual movement speed, so you can move very fast, and then also taking in the middle of someone else's action, you can spend a blood point to take a very quick action against them. So, for example, if some guy's pulling out a gun to shoot your vampire, you can just spend a blood point to quickly slap it out of his hand, which is definitely pretty neat.
That's very gun fu.
Exactly.
You could do with a vampire. With
so it lets
Celerity.
you take these quick actions and have these other effects, such as moving up in the initiative order, without bogging down the combat with all of these extra actions and that sort of thing. It's just a quick thing where you just kind of interrupt and say, "Oh, I slapped it out of his hand," which definitely speed things up overall compared to the old system.
And then the persistent effect is that you get the celerity dots as bonus to your defense or your dodge rolls, and that applies for firearm attacks. And that means also, because the way New World of Darkness works is that you don't get your defense against ranged attacks, like if it's with firearms anyway. Arrows is another thing. But it means then you always get your celerity dots to dodge gunfire, which is great.
It's great when they're trying to shoot you with a wooden arrow.
It's even better if they're shooting, especially if they're shooting you with a... Do you get your defense against a crossbow? Because it's a slower...
I don't think you do. But they changed that
No, I don't
quite
think you
a bit,
do.
because they had that rule in there in Requiem originally, but it was pretty much impossible to stake someone with a crossbow.
Yeah, because you had to hit and then deal... Because of the way the dice mechanic worked, it meant you had to deal at least 5 damage, I think, to do the hard. And of course, it was hard to hit because you were doing a called shot, which had like a -3 because it was a small part of the body. But that then works into how they've changed. But that's now fine because I can't remember off the top of my head how staking a vampire works now. But it's a lot easier because, of course, the way they've done weapon damage is so different now in that a weapon's bonus damage is added on to your success on your dice roll after you've rolled to attack. So it all works out that it makes more sense. Animalism was always kind of a... It was always a weird one because also the Ventru had it. And now it really represents that command of animals and also the command of the animal aspect of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so Feral Whispers is still there. Raised Familiar, I like. That, again, is kind of cool. Summon the Hunt, which is you just spill your blood on the ground and loads of animals come along and try to consume it, and you now have a horde to use, which is always fun. Feral Infection, which is you fill the area of your predatory aura, infecting everyone around you with the ravings of your beast. So essentially, animals and even people go mad. So that kind of fits in with the kind of element that the Ventru and Malkavians, Malkavians are a bloodline of the Ventru in Requiem. So I kind of like that aspect of it. And then Lord of the Land, I think is the show winner out of the update of animalism, which essentially means a vampire is able to mark its territory, and they then become mystically aware if their territory is infringed upon by other vampires. I think that's completely badass.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one.
I really like that one. Dominate is still Dominate.
Yeah.
And Majesty. Again, updates just to make them more thematically correct, and I think a bit more. I think there's some things that have changed. Again, just to further that push away from Masquerade. Also, of course, with Dominate and with Majesty is far more use of the ideas of making use of condition cards. You will see that a lot in those powers. But that's good because it makes the bookkeeping really damned easy. And it also means then, as something we've always said, and this goes back to problems with Cthulhu Tech as well, how much we hate mind control powers because it's that idea that a player is being disempowered of the story. And so the condition cards allows you to at least have some way of, as a player, if these powers are being used against you, to really gain some sort of a role in the story that's being played out. Even though technically your character is being mind controlled, you get to have some narrative control in there and get a bonus at the end of it all that you can use in something, whether it's a beat or a new condition or something.
Right, precisely. It retains player agency in a situation that would normally remove player options.
Nightmare is still awesome. I'll never get fed up with Nightmare. Nightmare was always a good addition in Requiem.
Absolutely. Hey, can I just jump in here and just kind of bring up that I don't like that they left in Auspex 5, which has been the same thing since Vampire the Masquerade, basically, where
Twilight projection.
A vampire can project into an astral form and kind of wander around. I've just never really found it too keeping in the theme of the game.
I think it works better now with the touchstones because you could use it to go interact with the people who are your touchstones without physically being there.
Huh.
It's kind of like that going into their dreams. You know how Dracula appears in the dreams of can't think of a name, but that kind of thing where the person could think they're still dreaming, but they're not. They're actually kind of in that half awake state, and they do see the person, or that they've infringed within their dream. I think it works for that kind of well.
Okay, well that's a good point. Still just think it's a little bit of a strange ability, and I hope they could come up with something a bit more interesting for Auspex 5. But no, that's definitely a huge benefit with the new system we just brought up.
Protean then.
Protean, it's a good one. Pretty much just everything is better with it overall, and the power makes a lot more sense than it used to. In Vampire the Masquerade, Protean was was the list of disciplines and effects that Dracula had. His powers kind of all just shoved into one discipline chain. But now with this Protean, it's more about a vampire's ability to control its own body in various different ways. So of course the first level power is not earth meld, it's unmarked grave, which allows them to meld with the earth and sink into it to perhaps sleep for the day. But they've also made it a lot more clear now so that you can easily, well, not easily because it takes a lot of vitae, but meld to concrete, steel, which gives you a lot more options than the previous, just sleeping during the day. You could hide and that sort of thing wherever.
You can still also feed while you're in that form. So if you're like an elder who's done this, you can have You can have whoever just coming along and spilling the blood of some poor mortal on your unmarked
Yeah,
grave.
that makes some pretty interesting cult. Yep.
Yeah. Predatory aspect has just been, I think, better defined in what you can, what it does in the fact that, you gain whatever aspects of a beast, and they've given a whole load of examples
Mm-hmm.
there. I think most of it's pretty much the same. They've just given more examples with those powers, and so it makes it better
Yeah,
defined
precisely.
and more interesting. Is there? They do something with claws?
Yeah, that's part
No.
of the predatory aspect is that you can grow claws. So they kind of all wrap that together.
Yeah. Oh, horrid talons is for a natural aspect, which is they deal even more damage. But if they've also got rid of them doing aggravated damage or anything like that. So yeah, that also couples with, I think, at the same time, it's just a bit of a rebalancing because everyone wanted protein claws.
Mm-hmm.
Um, cool. Nothing really to say about resilience or vigor. Obviously, there is a slew of devotions, and of course, across all of the books that have ever been out, more and more devotions uh, got put into Vampire the Requiem. So now, I would say we've got a selection of kind of some of the best ones that have turned up. Um, I'm trying to think if there's a particular one here that I really like off the top of my head. A selection. Vermin Flood. Yeah, again, some of these even use like three disciplines in order to invoke. Okay, Blood Sorcery is a good point to point out. So we had a few months, 6 months before this book came out, the Blood Sorcery book for Vampire the Requiem came out. So in some respects, that book is invalidated with regard to the exact rules on how things work. But, as has been said, the way that blood sorcery works in this book is it's built on top of the ideas that appeared in that book. So if you want to do the creative thaumaturgy as presented in Sacraments and Blasphemies, then is that right, or is it Blasphemies and Sacraments? It's blood sorcery, B and S, yeah. So the blood sorcery within Blood and Smoke is built on top of the ideas that were there, so it still essentially is the same thing. So you can port things over fairly easily. And actually, there's a sidebar that exactly says that for inventing new rituals. So there. The cool thing is, of course, Mysteries of the Dragon. So the one thing is that the Order of Dracul have this whole kind of Victorian scientist element to them. And that's really wicked. I really like that. But there was never really anything to support trying to be inventive with the way you're modifying your vampiric form. And so not only do we now have the coils of the dragon, we have the scales. And so the scales represent attempts to create new coils. So a scale is kind of like is the prototyping stage of a new coil. And I think that's just a really cool new aspect to the Ordo Dracul, and really hits upon what they are, which is a scientific philosophical movement, while you've got the two religious groups, two religious covenants, and you've got the two political covenants. Anything else to say on those, Mike? Or
Nope.
of course, within the descriptions of about the clans, they also give quick sections on 3 clans that don't exist anymore, one of which is the Julii, which goes back to Requiem for Rome, and then there's 2 other ones. Also, in the clan section, you have a page or so devoted to the group known as Seven, and again, some quick descriptions of some covenants which have, gone extinct. So again, they're really trying to represent that what we get within the core book is the main top slice of the world of Vampire the Requiem, and there are other covenants, there are other clans, and there are multiple bloodlines, and that we're just getting the tip of the iceberg. So yeah, and then obviously it goes on to the rules, blah 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 blah. There's loads of conditions, and then the final main section covers the Strix, and is really presenting them as a core type of antagonist to add into your Vampire the Requiem game. So, Mike, how do you feel about this prominence of the Strix now within the Requiem setting?
Well, as we know from Twin Peaks, the owls are not what they seem. And I haven't really read the section, so I mean, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I would say what the Strix represents is that kind of they've always been, this as much as the vampires can play their games and plan for centuries and play out their little games, the Strix are the jokers of the setting. They're going to turn your plans upside down, and they're going to gather and watch all the vampires screw up. They are obviously spirits, but they're also kind of not spirits. So there's an element of how much you want to cross over with the spirit rules out of say werewolf and so forth. Otherwise, I think they're a great type of antagonist. I think they're kind of that wild card you can introduce, and they really add that extra level of distrust. As you see, say, as you have this whole section, they give an example of, say, a vampire watching video footage of themselves meeting with other people who they don't know. And that's all this whole idea that the Strix are able to possess vampires and even daywalk when they've possessed the vampire's body. So there's a lot of scary elements that adds in. That element of the unknown. And I think that's what the Strix represents. It represents this thing that's very close to vampires, that is vampiric in its nature, but it is an unknown in their world. And we like that element of New Order Darkness. We don't like having things well defined. We like that element of mystery. So yeah, what would you say then, Mike, in the end? What's your impression of Blood and Smoke overall then?
Definitely pretty positive. I was looking at it more for the mechanics and all of that. So I would still say that for running Vampire the Masquerade, this definitely is a better system overall. There's definitely differences in how humanity is treated and all that, but if you just wanted to use this rule set for Vampire the Masquerade, I think it'd be okay. With the conversion document, the translation guide that was done previously, it wouldn't be too difficult to convert over a lot of the powers from Masquerade into Requiem. So definitely A+ in that regard. But I think we should probably ask Chigg. Chigg, what's your overall rating from what you've heard? Is it totes legit?
It sounds like it may very well be totes magoo.
Whoa! You heard it right here, folks. That's probably the highest rating he's ever given anything on this show.
Probably so.
Chris, do we want to talk about Demon a little bit real quick?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to have more time to talk about it on the next show, actually, to devote more time to it, because this is, again, becoming a really long episode of Darker Days. What to say? Straight up, Demon of the Descent, having read through it, is an interesting game to read through. I know there was a lot of concern with the types of demons you can play. When they fall into these different classes of psychopomp, and what was the one? There was integrator and all that, and how all these play off. But once you've read through Demon of the Sun, it makes sense of what you can play, and it's. Yeah, it's just nothing like Demon the Fallen, that's for sure.
Nope.
It's far more. It's far more.
Well, it's just a completely different game. Again, when you're looking at Demon of the Fallen, you've got this sort of rebuilding your society and culture and preparing for the last days, as opposed to Demon of the Descent, which has this entire conceit, sort of a spy drama almost. You don't know who you can trust. You're being hunted constantly, and you have to do whatever you can to maintain your cover, while also, in some cases, fighting back against this entity that created you.
Yeah.
So it's almost, it's Jason Bourne, the World of Darkness, awesome crossover.
I think that's right, because obviously, as playing a demon, you are cut off from the God Machine, and whether you want to integrate with reintegrate even with the God Machine or whatever, all demons agree that they've still got to hide from the God Machine because it is looking for them. It does want them, and it wants to destroy them, whatever, or recycle them. And the important thing is, even if, and this is where integrators are an interesting one compared to the other groups of demons, is that integrators don't want to lose their sense of identity when they reintegrate with the God Machine. So that's an important aspect, is that demons want to be their own person, but in order to be their own person, they've got to hide from the God Machine. To do that, they have to take on covers and steal, they have to make bargains with people to claim parts of their identity, or steal people's identities wholly and destroy them and take their soul, essentially. So you want to be your own person, but you're stealing other people's identities. You're fashioning false covers as patchwork jobs from other people's identities, so that you could hopefully either find where your own hell exists, whether you can find a world of your own away from the God Machine, or you could find the perfect cover and exist in the world of darkness, or you could reintegrate with the God Machine but still be your own person. So ultimately, Demon Descent is a Gnostic, is a tech Gnostic, as in, it talks about seeing the glorious patterns of the world and the underlying meaning of them. It's technostic espionage with the ultimate aim of finding yourself and getting to be that person. So that while you could be learning all this, all this mystical, the very mystical nature of the God Machine and what its purpose is, that is all secondary, really, to the ultimate goal of being your own person. There's a lot of crossover with Mage. It even says in the book, like, you could play an interesting chronicle with demon and mages working together, and that says a lot about a game when it's straight up. He's quite happy to say this could be good crossover. Even it says you do good crossover with Vampire, where you're dealing with hidden societies, because again, both societies have things they want to hide from. Again, some of the powers just, we've been going through disciplines just now of Vampire. Some of the powers for these demons are cosmic in their nature, and that's really fun. And yeah, there's just a lot to go through, and it'd be good to try and, I think when we maybe cover this on the next show, is kind of talk about what our ideas for maybe what a type of chronicle we would want to run. Because that's, again, I think it's all well and good to review a game, but unless you know what you would want to run from it, I think it's a hard sell. If you can give people an example of, I think this would be a good chronicle to play.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that, Chigg, you always say is, what do these guys do? What's the point of this? And there's actually a segment in Demon of the Descent, which I'll send over to you, which is just titled, What Do Demons Do?
Now, I'm not going to take all of the credit for this being put in the book, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree that this was put in the book because I complained about it.
I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. So there we go. All right, yeah, let's talk about Demon a bit more next time. That'll give me some time to brush up on the powers a little bit and the and different mechanics. So that should be good.
Yeah, and we can get to the nitty-gritty of ciphers. The other thing is, I'm hoping, once I've looked at, I'll download it like now, with the Necropolis book for Mummy the Curse. I might actually have an idea of how I would run Mummy, because that's my problem with that game, is I really don't know what to do with it because of what mummies are. So,
yep,
yeah,
there'll be something else to talk about. Maybe we can make it a double feature, a creature double feature: how to play demon, how to play mummy. I think that'd be a good one.
I think, well, we've said before we want to do that more as Darklings, is that kind of like show and tell. Here's my idea for a chronicle for whatever game. But there's nothing stopping us doing that in the main show and just throwing ideas out there.
Absolutely, sounds good.
So
I think that's it for the New World of Darkness, and then for closing remarks, we will have another contest coming up. Still need to work out all the details about that, but there will be another one coming up pretty soon. And that's for another New World of Darkness books. I think we're going to have to do something for a classic World of Darkness as well, aren't we, Chigg?
Absolutely.
All right, good. We'll we'll think about that in the near future. So, where can people find us? Well, of course, they can send us an email over at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Or if you want to join us on Google+, you can go over to our community. It's always hopping. We've had some interesting discussions lately, off the top of my head, about initiative, and there was that very extensive discussion about Genius the Transgression, which we may yet cover in the future. So definitely cool stuff. Where else, Chris? Where are we?
We're on Facebook. We actually got some interaction with people on there recently. I've always said Facebook is seems to be a place of dying social interaction, but we do post updates there. You can find us on Blogger. So we do have a blog. I've not updated it recently, so I might throw up some pictures, and there'll be updates again once I start running Iron Kingdoms again, and then hopefully after that I might write something about something that comes into my mind as I'm doing Fading Suns writing. We're on Twitter. I don't update stuff there enough on Twitter. Maybe we need Chigg, we need to make sure you've got access to all these things so you can post updates as well, because it's really hard managing a lot of social media stuff when you actually have like a day job and stuff. Is there anything else we've got that people can connect to us by?
I think we covered it. Tumblr?
Yeah. Tumblr, I try and update it when I can. On its path is fairly active there. It's mainly a nice place to go to. If people do go on Tumblr, I think it's the best venue to go see Samuel Aria's artwork as it goes up, and other people. But there's gaming discussion that goes on in the world of Tumblr. And I think that's it. Really.
Hey, speaking of Sam, there's some really sweet artwork that's very similar to Sam's style in Necropolis DC, but it's actually not by him. It's by some other guy. I'll have to go find his name.
Oh, right. Okay.
But definitely good stuff in there.
Oh, and I did actually post recently the Hannibal the Vigil blog post about how you can use the TV series of Hannibal as inspiration for World of Darkness games. People need to go watch that. Season 2 is drawing to close, and it's been bloody awesome.
It's been really, amazing.
Really good. I mean, it's a shame because its ratings aren't great, but it seems like whoever's in charge, the people at NBC don't give a damn, and they've gone like, fine, have a series 3 because it's really good. Like Brian Fuller's done some excellent work with getting over the characterization of certain characters far better than they ever were in the novels. So check it out. We might talk about it more at some point, or maybe I can get Sam here to write a review of season 2 and why people should watch it all, or why they shouldn't.
All right, good stuff. So I think with that, that's pretty much the end of the episode. Next time, we're back in the saddle, so I think we can do another episode pretty quickly. Maybe talking about a little changeling, Chigg, because you've got like 50 pages of questions and answers to do.
I've answered all those questions. I just need to, we need to record it.
All right,
so
perfect.
Next time.
And then talking about, I guess, Demon and Mummy a little bit, and that should be good.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it, folks, and everyone, have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Any better?
Oh, it's way better. Yeah, I don't know. Something messy is happening.
Oh, yeah. It is a lot better.
Yeah, I have Comcast, and I don't know, our internet connection sucks.
Monopoly,
I have no
internet
idea.
vision.
Yeah,
All I know is that you live in the land of milk and where they destroy the internet.
Yeah, essentially.